name is Jacqueline from Your Parent Journey, and I'm a parenting mentor. So I support you guys. Yeah, there's a lot out there that is for the babies and the kids, and it's really focused on them. So I like to support mums and dads. So I've come here to talk to you today about why it's sometimes so hard to raise kids. I mean, you might have heard some stories out there that sometimes it's a little bit challenging. I asked myself, why is parenting so hard? One of the reasons is we parent from the past. Now, what if we had some awareness around the fact that the way that we're going to parent comes from the way that our parents parented us? It's like we just kind of slip into this autopilot. And it can happen before we have kids as well. Have you ever sort of been saying something and you think, oh my God, that was my mother, or that sounded just like my father right there. And it's almost like when we start parenting, it goes next level. So the second point that I've got is we parent based on other people's opinions, what other people think of us and their judgments. And we parent based on that. So imagine if we could just live and not give a damn about what anybody else thought, as if other people's judgments didn't affect us, as if our own judgments didn't affect us. How would that look? And the third point, if we often put our kids before ourselves once we become parents, and we put them ahead of our relationship as well. So what would happen if we actually looked after ourselves first? And if we actually made a commitment to, do that without feeling guilty or selfish, and made a commitment to nurturing our relationship, with each other, because that was there before the kids came along, right? So number 4 is, we try and raise little mini-me's, like these little versions of ourselves. And do you think it would help to have some understanding around the differences between ourselves and our partners, and then the differences between ourselves and our children? Because we're all different. So some understanding around our kids that they're not just these little replicas, that we can mold and shape into little versions of ourselves. I tried that and it didn't work. It really didn't work. So in my own journey, I've been working with these 7 main areas in my life. And it's transformed it. It's transformed the relationship that I have with my kids. It's transformed the relationship that I have with my partner, with my mother, with every single person in my life, working with these 7 areas. My life is better. I love parenting my little boys. And there was once a time where I didn't. I was having a hard time and I wasn't enjoying it. And now it's helping my clients, the couples, the mums and dads that I work with, and I'd love to share a little bit about it with you guys. And what it is, how can we not slip into these patterns of the ways of doing things when we parent? So the way that we can do that is to learn how to listen to our bodies, learn how to trust our body. Now, our bodies have all of this wisdom. If you're pregnant, you'll be getting pretty savvy on what that wisdom is. I mean, it's incredible. Our body knows how to conceive little humans. Our body knows how to grow these little humans within our body, and it knows how to birth them. If we can get out of this for long enough, as long as this doesn't trip us up along the way. The mind with its thoughts and beliefs and stories, that go round and round and round, like this. And they can sometimes trip us up out there in the world. Who wishes that they could just kind of turn this off sometimes? Just be in some stillness and some peace. So we're talking about the miracle of life. I mean, this is just such a beautiful image. The fact that we as men and women can actually do this, can create these little humans within us. It's pretty awe-inspiring, the fact that we can create human life. And if you're carrying a little girl, then you're already carrying 2 generations within you, because that little girl is already carrying all of the eggs that she has in her life already. So there's 2 generations within one body. It's incredible. So our body has this incredible wisdom to share with us. It knows what to do when we can stop and listen to it. So connection is one of these 7 main areas that I've been working with. And connection's a pretty generic word, and it's different for everyone. You know, what does connection mean to you? Now, what would you like more of in terms of connection? How would you like your connection with your partner to be? And how would you like it to be with your children? You know, we all want these loving, beautiful, deep connections with the ones that we love around us. And sometimes things get in the way of that. You know, the generation gap is wider than it ever has been before. You know, kids are really different these days. They're being born into a really, really different climate than when we were kids. You know, I used to be happy with one of those pens that had all the different colours around it. You know, and now these kids want iPads. It's a completely different world. You know, the advances that have been made in the world today in medicine and science and transportation, technology, you know, it's incredible. I asked myself, isn't it time we did parenting in a different way? You know, I had some new techniques, some new tools, a new manual to do parenting. Rather than repeating these patterns and beliefs of the past, you know, the ones that our parents gave us and the ones that their parents gave them. Or reacting really strongly to those patterns and kind of hanging out right at the other end, you know, of that belief. Oh, my parents would never let me do that, so I'm going to let my kids do it all the time. You know, sometimes that's not really helpful either. So what needs to be in place to be able to create these strong connections? It's something to think about. So passion. Passion is the next piece that I want to invite you to have a little think about. You know, what's your passion? You know, I'm not just talking about the sexy kind of passion. I'm talking about what makes you come alive. You know, what blows your hair back. You know, what makes you feel amazing. What makes life worth living. You know, this is passion. And sometimes our passion is having kids. You know, some people's passion is having kids, and that's what they want to do. That's what gets them going. And sometimes it's a whole bunch of other stuff. And if it's a whole bunch of other stuff, how do we keep that alive when we're parents? You know, especially in those early bubbly years of parenting. How do we keep that energy within us alive? You know, is passion even allowed after we've had kids? You know, it's almost like sometimes it becomes expected that we make our life all about our kids and we get forgotten. You know, mum and dad, you know, I was a man before I became a dad, and I was a woman before I became a mother. You know, how do we not lose that part of ourselves? This is one thing that I used to love to do with my family. Yeah, we took a trip around Spain and we rode on our bikes, which was really super cool. And you can tell it was in Spain and not New Zealand because they don't have helmets on. They don't do helmets over there, so health and safety is a little bit different. But you know, how do we keep the things that we want to do alive even when we have children? And especially if we have different passions from our partner. This is another thing that we did. We went on a speedboat ride. My little one looks a little bit freaked out there, but apparently had an amazing time and he remembers it with joy. So the next piece is clarity. You know, do we actually know what we want in life? I mean, I knew pretty well what I didn't want, you know, and I'd always focus on that. You know, I don't want you to talk to me like that, and I don't want you to make the bed like that. It was always focusing on that stuff, focusing on the negative stuff, focusing on the stuff that I didn't want. And how good would it be to focus on the stuff that I did want, the stuff that was happening, you know, the really good bits, you know, and getting clear on how I want to parent, getting clear on how my partner wants to parent and how we smush that together. You know, do I actually want to parent like my mum and dad? You know, I mean, you know, who had the perfect childhood? You know, the one that gave you all of the tools and guidance to navigate the world with a perfect sense of confidence and self-worth. Yeah, I didn't have one of those either. So how do we do it a bit differently? You know, I've found that with many of my clients, when they don't have clarity on what they want or what they want their parenting to look like, they slip back into this autopilot, yeah, back into these old patterns of how our parents parented. But how do we get clear? Yeah, how do we really get clear, especially when our mind's going? So, how do we get clear? And what I've found is that my body or my heart really tells me the truth. Yeah, and it tells me if I'm willing to stop and willing to ask it and willing to listen. And my mind will often tell me these stories based on what other people think, you know, which is not true for me. So that's why I sort of asked, do you make decisions from your head or your heart? And for me, when I get clear on my heart, I get clear on what I want. So what is being in your heart? Being in the heart. I'd read a lot about being a heart-centered parent, but I didn't really know what that meant. I thought that I thought that I knew about love. I loved my partner, and I loved my kids, and I loved my parents, and I loved my friends. But I think I had quite a few expectations around that love. They had to act a certain way or behave a certain way before they'd have my love. And if they didn't, then I'd kind of withdraw it. I'd retract it. And when I had kids, I found a whole different other way to love. The unconditional kind. The kind where I was loving through the pooing all through the Moses basket, and loving through the getting peed on in the eye when I was changing a nappy. All of those things that we do as parents, and loving through that anyway. And I found this unconditional love a little bit harder though as my babies left the baby stage. When they started walking and talking and getting little attitudes. I found that a little bit more challenging because I spent so much time in my head, around these expectations and thoughts and judgments around how I thought things should be or how I thought they shouldn't be. No, you shouldn't be throwing food all over the table. And no, you shouldn't be taking all the contents out of my makeup bag and applying it to yourself and the mirror and your teddy bear. You should be behaving a different way. You should be different. And for me, finding empathy and compassion and acceptance and love and forgiveness didn't come from this place. It came from this place. So I'd love to show you for a moment, if I can. If you're able to, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes for a moment, just because we can. So just allowing your eyes to close and just taking a deep breath into your body. Just allowing the thoughts to drift away, just for a moment. Almost like you're swiping them like notifications on your phone. And taking a moment to focus on the breath. Just taking a couple of deep breaths in and bringing your awareness to the center of you, into your heart space. And taking another deep breath in and allowing it to escape out of your mouth just with a little sigh. Now I'm inviting you just to open your eyes really gently and just to look ahead. What's it like to see the world from that place? What do you think it would be like to parent from that place? Once I learned how to live in that place, how to parent from that place, now I like to help other mums and dads parent from that place. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was expression. How do we express ourselves? Why is it so hard to speak honestly sometimes, to actually say what we really, really mean? To speak authentically, like really speaking the truth. Why is that so hard? And why is it so hard to accept the expression of other people? So what I'm talking about here is communication, about listening, about the way that we express ourselves through our voice and our clothes and our choices, the way that we are in the world. And the way that we all do this really differently, if we're being honest with ourselves. And asking myself the question, how will the way that I express myself invite my children to do the same? To be that authentic and that honest with the way that they express themselves. So this is my niece. So will accepting, encouraging your full expression invite children to do the same? And accepting that. Accepting when they're playful and exuberant and when they're not. And accepting all of the versions and colours of expression. This is my little boy, and he has lots of different versions and colours of expression. And when I allow my own versions and colours to be expressed, I invite him to do the same, without judgment. So vision. What do you want your family dynamic to look like? And how different is it from the way that you were parented? You know, it almost feels like the last few generations have been keeping up with the Joneses, you know, just kind of doing what everybody else is doing, like a kind of cookie cutter approach of like a 1950s or a 1970s family, you know, just doing what's been done before. I mean, this is the Brady Bunch, right? And this is my family. And it's like, wow, there's not actually a lot that's changed in there. And that's my mum's idea of a really good family photo. And this is our version. I also had another version of us on the beach, lying down, holding hands, you know, like stick figures. And it's like, well, what does it look like? You know, what's our version? How do we want our family to look like, with all our own different values and visions and dreams? And how do we hold true to that? My mum also didn't like my wedding photos because they weren't posed enough and, you know, polite enough. So trust. What would allow you to just stop? To stop the worrying, to stop the control, to stop the micromanaging, to stop the working too hard, to stop the not looking after yourself. You know, the treadmill that we so often find ourselves on. Go, 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 go. Busy, 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 busy. You know, what would it take to help you just stop? You know, to be able to trust in yourself and your partner and the world around you. What would it be? What would it take to be able to trust yourself more as a parent? Because it's pretty important. Do you think it would help to learn how to trust yourself more as a parent? So these are the 7 areas that I have been working with, and this is them all together, you know, with the heart in the centre. And they are the way that we experience the world, you know, the way that we experience life. And I reckon they pretty much cover everything. We call them the pathways. And as we walk through life, we navigate these pathways, and they weave in and interrelate with each other. They influence one another. And the way that we walk these pathways impact everything that we do, impact everyone that we interact with. So it's almost like, you know, unless we're really clear on what our vision is, we can't express it to somebody else and make it real. If we don't trust ourselves as a parent, and we don't do that through our heart, it's really challenging to have really deep loving connections. And if we're not clear on what we want and we don't have enough passion to drive it, we can't create our dreams. You know, so they all link and they all interweave. And I didn't have a lot of some of these in my life, you know. I wasn't strong, you know, didn't have a lot of trust, wasn't able to express myself that well. Definitely didn't have a lot of clarity. So another really interesting part about this work, about these pathways, is that we all align really strongly with one of them. Yeah, one of them might be kind of jumping out at you. Yeah? And all of the members of our family, of our children, you know, our wider family, our friends, they all align really strongly with one as well. So when I discovered this, and when I started working with people around this, I could see that we all kind of stand on a different one of these circles. So we're all coming at life and seeing things and interacting with life a different way. And when I looked at that, it made me understand why my kids weren't little mini-me's, and why my husband sometimes seemed like a different species, and why sometimes me and my friends just could not see eye to eye, no matter what we did. So working with the pathways has really given me this really deep understanding of how different we all are, and how we can work to those strengths rather than let them hinder us. I mean, because we have all of these within us, don't we? You know, we all have passion, we all have connection, we all have clarity at times. We all trust, or not.